Hello folks, so what we're going to be going over today is a little bit more advanced selecting methods. So up until now you've learned rectangular marquee, the elliptical marquee, you have the lasso, polygonal lasso, magnetic lasso type tools, but there are far more options to go ahead and use to select things. Some of the things we want to actually work with, again, there are actually object selection tools, which again, you can go ahead and make a selection around something, let it process for a little bit, and it will start to select things like we have here. So it's like with this object selection tool, what we can do is if you want to select like a subject like this, we can go ahead and surround it around what we want to select. And what Adobe Photoshop does is it makes a guess as far as what you are trying to select. So that is the object selection tool. A quick selection tool is more or less kind of like painting in an area. So if I were to deselect and I go into this area here, you can see it makes a quick selection, but it's not perfect. It does not select certain areas. Like in here, it was too close to the sky for this picture. The magic wand tool, what it can do, again, if I were to deselect and I go here, just kind of like click, it'll make a guesstimate as far as what you want to adjust or what you're trying to select in this area. Now, of course, you can set its tolerance in certain ways. So it's like if you find out it's selecting too much, you can come up to the top and you can change it down to, let's say, 15 to give you a much less selection here. To add to it, you can hold down Shift and keep clicking to kind of like add to your selection here. Now, of course, those are not the only ways of selecting things. I'm going to be showing you a multitude of different ways of selecting elements to be able to do whatever you want with them. All right, so one of the options, I'm going to go up to the top where it says Select. If I choose Select, you're going to find that there are these 4 different options here. If I choose, I'm going to come back to color range here in a minute. But if you go to, let's say, focus area, what that will do is it's starting to think and it will start to select things that they think is in focus. So right here in this area, you can choose a view mode, which you can basically see the marching ants. You can see an overlay. You can see on black, on white, on black and white, and on layers and reveal layers. So with many of these things, again, nothing is set in stone. If you use your parameters in focus range, well, if I go smaller, it's going to start to choose things that are a little bit more in focus. And if I go the other way, it'll start to select things that are, least in focus the other way, and then more in focus on the other direction. All right. As far as output, what kind of output do you want to see? Do you want to see it set as a selection? You want it to be a layer mask? You want to be a new layer with this is a new layer, or do you want a new layer with layer mask? So you can choose different things that are options here. I'm going to actually choose just selection for this because I'm not really going to stay too far into it. All right, so I can go ahead and hit OK, and that will give me my marching ants, which at any time I can use my lasso tool or whatever you want. And if you remember, you can add to it just like so, or take away an area. Like if I wanted this area here selected, of course, I'm doing an awful job of selecting it around, but you can kind of get an idea as far as what it's trying to do. So I'm going to deselect that by hitting Command D. I'm going to go up to Select, and I'm going to find that there's an option called Subject. Now, the subject, what it's trying to guess is what's actually the main focus of the image. If you had multiple subjects in this, it might choose all those as well. So you have to kind of figure what's Photoshop trying to figure out what you want to select. And right now, the focus point of this photo is the girl here. So what it did was it selected her, but it did leave some elements in that it did not select, like it did not see this thumb because it was too close to the to the shore. So again, at any point, you can go ahead and add your selection to that. Or take away. If there's a certain part that you want to take away, you can do that. Alright. So I'm going to deselect that. Now if I go up to select and I choose the option called color range. Color range is an option that you can actually use if there's a certain color that you want to choose and kind of like change the color of that aspect. So what happens here is if I go down to the bottom where it says selection preview, I can see different options like black matte, white matte, quick mask. Okay. If I go to, let's say, none or whatever, I can bring my cursor out into the photo, and let's say I want to select kind of like this blue range. I can add that. I can also add to that as well using this add plus eyedropper to kind of like add to it if I want to. Now, as far as fuzziness, what that does is it kind of like gives you much more of a control as far as what actually chosen. So if I go down further, it starts to narrow that selection of that color. If I go up higher, it starts to add more colors into it, which is not necessarily what you want it to do. But we can bring it down until we know approximately where that color is seen. Like you can see most of that color is in white here, which is pretty much what I want. If I go up to if I hit OK, you can see it creates a selection of these particular colors. Now, if I go down to the bottom where I have my adjustment layer, I can click on that. I can choose hue saturation. And when I do that, I can go up here where it says hue, and I can basically change its color a little bit. Now, some areas are not going to change as much, but with this, it selects most of the colors that I wanted it to change to, so I can kind of like change the color of her outfit there. Much like that. All right. So I'm going to basically hit trash can here, which can basically give you, take out that adjustment layer. So I can go back to this. Now, you can also select things. Instead of using that, I can actually choose different things. Like if I go to this one where it says the phone, oftentimes it's like when you start to do something like this, it'll probably say, okay, well, we're going to select subject. And you can see that it did not select everything that I wanted it to select. It did an okay job knowing that this was a phone or whatever, but the subject area is primarily focused on people, is really what it's trying to look for. But you can see in the shadow, it doesn't really define very well. Right? And as you know, you can use a polygonal lasso to kind of take out certain things. But there's often a tool that I use all the time, and that is actually the pen tool. If you go down to the bottom or down toolbox, a little over halfway down, you'll find that there's the pen tool. If I come up here, you can kind of see that we have the option of a path here. So we can choose either shape or path. We want path for this particular one. All right. And if I go over to the gear icon, I can choose what is called rubber band. And what that will do is it kind of like give me the option, kind of like a polygonal lasso, where it follows you around type of element. So if I were to zoom in and I go to this area here, if I go ahead and click just once, you see that basically I have this kind of like line kind of following me. So if I move up here, it kind of gives me an impression of what I want to choose. If I click again, then I go over here and I can click, hold, and drag to create this kind of like curve that's following me. Do that as well. Come here, create another type of curve. And then I can come down here and choose this, go around this curve. Go over here. And then kind of finish it off like so. Alright, so allow me to kind of like create these kind of like curves and lines and all that kind of stuff, which is much easier to use. Alright, and what we can do is we can right click and say make selection. And what that will do is give me this pop-up box that gives me the feather option or feather radius, which is a way of actually defining how soft that selection is going to be. It could be very blurred, it could be very hard. I'm going to choose it as 0, which means I don't want it to have like a very, very soft edge. So I'll go ahead and hit OK. All right. And then what I can do is I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of show you how this works. So I'm going to double click on that, create it as a layer. And I'm going to come down here at the bottom and choose my layer mask. And as you can see, it will create that kind of like nice hard edge. And I'll go ahead and create a new layer. And I'll go up to Edit, Fill, just to give it some kind of color here. Let's choose a purple. And hit OK. And then I'll rearrange my layers just so you can kind of see that it's now cut out. And the edges are pretty hard. So it kind of like looks like it's floating above. Not bad, not bad. I love using the pen tool because it allows me to kind of like select things that have a lot more control of what I'm selecting. But it's not always the greatest thing to kind of like choose. Depends on what you're trying to select. All right. So I'm going to close this particular file right now and come back to this girl here. And this other tab actually has a sky, which we want to go ahead and kind of like, I'm going to take these clouds and kind of like move them over into the photo of the girl there. So another option that you can choose is things like this, where you've got clouds that have variations in like varying and all that kind of stuff. All right. What I want to do is I'm going to, well, just ignore that for a second. All right. So we have the background here. I want to go ahead and start to select some of these clouds. Now, the other way is you can do this via channels. Channels is this next tab that's here. Ignore that. All right. If I go to my channels, you're going to find that you're going to see that there's a red, green, and blue channel, depending on what you have. There's cyan, magenta, yellow, black, whatever kind of color mode you do have set. Right now it's set red, green, blue. But you're going to look for a channel that has the highest contrast, and that would be this one, the red channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to duplicate that particular channel, which is I would suggest doing that because what I'm going to do is actually going to could possibly ruin the photo, and I want to be able to come back to it. So right now I'm going to set as a copy of the red channel. And I'm going to come up here where it says Image, Adjustments, and Levels. And when I set the levels, what it's going to do is allow me to have more of the black pixels here, more of the white pixels here, and this is the middle gray. I'm going to bring my black pixels down so I can get a much more greater contrast as far as what's here. Like so. And I'm going to hit OK. And what I want to do is I want to actually hold down the Control or Command key on a Mac and click on the image. All right, and click on the thumbnail in the channel. And I'll come up to Layers. And I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, and I want to fill it with white. Okay. So what I just did was I added a new layer with the selection that I have here. Now, of course, it doesn't look like it's going to create something that's interesting. What it's doing is actually feathering those edges depending on what's around it. So if I go back to the girl, or if I actually tear this away for a second, I'm going to go to my Move tool, and I'm going to click, hold, and drag on this area. And I'll minimize that. And you can see that here it's selected all of those clouds. So I'm going to transform that. Command T or Control T. And it'll allow me to scale it. Just like so. Now you see it's actually in the foreground of this, which is not bad, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. Alright, so I want to be able to select the girl here. And if I hide this layer for a second, I go back to, or I basically go up to select. Sorry, go background. Sorry. Select subject. So it's going to select the girl here. And if I go back to my layer 1, I want to add a mask to that. Now, since this is selected in the back or the mask box, you can see that here it's just creating showing the mask or showing the clouds inside her. We want to be able to actually reverse that. So if I go up to image, adjustments, invert, it'll reverse that mask. So it's like there's more of it out here than there is inside. And if I click on the chain link and I click on the cloud layer, I can move that around depending on what I want to see it as. So sometimes if, like, let's say we go ahead and create a new layer, I'm going to kind of like paint in more of this, kind of like, let's add a little bit more blue into the sky. So I'm going to go edit, fill, color, and choose that blue. Hit OK and hit OK. And I'm going to basically use the subject. So I'm going to hide those layers. I'm going to go to select subject. Come back to layer 2, and I'm going to create a mask of that. And I'm going to go up to image, adjustments, invert, and then I could possibly even set a blend mode to, let's say, multiply and show the clouds like that. And I can adjust this. So let's say I don't want it to be all blue. So I can make a polygonal lasso, and I'm going to basically create this selection here. And I'm going to come to my mask layer in this blue area. And I'm going to go ahead and edit, fill with black. Like so. Now I've got some nice color blue in the background. All right. So hopefully that added a little bit more extra options for you to go ahead and create more selections. So I'm going to stop right there, and I'll see you in the next video.